Welcome to An Epiphany with Tiffany. My name is Tiffany, and I've just had an epiphany. This podcast is all about Christian singles looking for community. Christian dating can be quite a mess these days. I'll share stories from my guests and practical tips for successful love. Dating shouldn't be this hard, right? So grab your favorite snack or drink and curl up with this episode, and you might just have an epiphany of your own. So the question was, what does spiritual maturity look like to you? So, yeah. If you want to if you don't remember exactly what you said, that's totally fine. But yeah, that's the question. What does spiritual maturity look like to you?
So, to me, spiritual maturity, I think sometimes it's easier to say what it's not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I see someone making broad generalizations, just like sweeping judgments, that is a little bit of a red flag for me, just because I have been humbled so many times in my life. I feel like it's human nature to think that you know everything, even if you've never experienced that particular thing before.
Mm-hmm.
And so then over time, God has used circumstances in my life to really show me that you don't know what you would do in a situation if you were in that person's shoes.
Mm.
So I had all kinds of thoughts about women who, single moms, back when I never ever thought that I would be one. So yeah, I think that's one, is spiritual maturity is being able to recognize that, I don't actually know what I would do if I were in that person's shoes. I don't remember her whole backstory, that kind of thing. And then I think in my answer, I said something about having gone through trials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've always had a pretty deep faith, but I come from the greenhouse nursery industry. Mm-hmm. And a plant that hasn't gone through very many trials, it's always had all the water it's needed. It's always had all the food it's needed. Its roots are really shallow. They've never had to stretch their nutrients. And so I've noticed in my life that when I'm going through a drought, when I'm really being tested, that is when it's either reach for the water or drown. Like I'm going to have to really reach for, really lean on God in this situation, because I can't do it by myself. And he's always been there for me. So I think that when I look for a man who is spiritually mature, one of my questions is, what kind of trials have you been through? And how did your relationship with God affect, how that went? Was he there with you? Did you find him afterward?
Mm. Yeah, that's such a great... It's a great point because I feel like, well, I guess in my experience, I've had some people go, oh, well, some guys to say, oh, I haven't experienced that, blah, blah, blah. So like, I don't want anything to do with you. And I'm all, ouch. Like, okay, but thanks. Bye. You know what I mean? Like, what are you supposed to do with that response?
Lovely.
I know, so nice. But the irony of it, though, is like, when I was listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, okay, it makes more sense. They didn't necessarily in those cases probably experience all the same, or they definitely didn't experience the same trials as me, but maybe even their trials weren't as intense to begin with, generally speaking. So their root system wasn't very deep to begin with, and I'm all, huh. I don't know. I just thought of that while you were talking.
Yeah. I think of someone as an old man and like having eventually learned that lesson. You know what I mean? Like once they're old, they will have had those lessons in life. Because I was that person once. I was that person once who made those sweeping judgments. And it wasn't that I was a bad person. It was just that I just hadn't learned those lessons yet. I feel like, trying to give grace to myself, give grace to others, all that good stuff. We're all on our journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're all at different points in our journey. And, sometimes I have to remember that. Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder what other people who are further on their journey, how they're rolling their eyes at me. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm doing such a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, well, she'll know what she did wrong eventually.
She'll get there.
Great.
It's like that. I don't know if you ever heard this from your parents, but I heard it from my parents all the time of like that, oh, you'll know when you're older, or, you'll understand when you get there. And I'm all, okay. But it's true. It is true. It is true. You learn a lot, and, sometimes you reach this point where you go, sorry, mom and dad. At least for me.
Yeah. Well, for me, a lot with my siblings. I'm like, man, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. And I tell that to my kids now that, I know I seem like such a wonderful person, but I've said some terrible things. I've done some terrible things, and I held them with me for all these years. And I eventually had to go and tell my siblings, I'm so sorry for telling you had a horrible voice. I was like, there was no reason for saying that. I was literally just being mean. So, yeah, we all do it.
Yep. I've been there with my own siblings too. Ironically, recently, we've all just kind of had this moment where we're like, yeah, we were horrible to each other.
We all turned out okay, though.
We all might need some therapy, but it's fine.
Everybody does.
So true. So true. I agree. I'm like such a huge proponent of therapy. It may or may not have to do with my background being in psychology and social work, but it's so, I feel like it's such a great tool for healing. Obviously God is the ultimate healer, but I feel like you can walk through these processes with a therapist that you might not be able to do in other scenarios,
Yeah, I just feel like it facilitates a quicker recovery. It's just like having a coach versus trying to work out by yourself. It's faster. They can show you things that might be really hard to figure out on your own, and just with God versus, all these people who have learned all these things over all these years, and it's just a more expedited problem or process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. So I've been in therapy for a year and something. Not quite a year and a half yet, but close. And when I look at Tiffany a year and a half ago to Tiffany now, I'm all, whoa. Like, you don't always realize it sometimes, like when you're in the midst of the healing, and then you get to a point where somebody points out something like, oh, you would have reacted differently to whatever the scenario is. And I'm all, yeah, I would have. That was another sibling moment. Like I had my brother go, man, I used to be able to push those buttons real good. And I'm all, growth.
Yes.
And I just looked at him and I was like, therapy, bro, therapy. And he goes, yeah, I can tell. And I'm all, I know, thank you. Yay. Something's working. But anyway, it's a great process. And yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like you can heal a lot. Not generally speaking, you can heal faster instead of being like, I don't know about you, but I'm stubborn. So when I don't deal with things, it takes me longer to let it go. And so when you go into therapy and you deal with it semi right away, you're like, okay, I'm done now. I can let that go and move on.
You have more tools, right? They teach you tools to use that you will have with you all the time, not only when you're with your therapist. So that's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. It's been very beneficial, but I will get off the soapbox of therapy.
Well, honestly, it brings me to a point of green flags. And so a man who has been in therapy and is able to talk about things that they've learned about themselves, ways that they've changed, that kind of thing, that's pretty good green flag for me. Just looking for that growth. Are you able to recognize how you've grown? Are you able to recognize your weaknesses? And be able to say, this is where I've grown. This is where I still struggle. That kind of thing. That always really impresses me.
I would have to agree.
I don't know if that was one of your questions or not, but there's some information.
It was not, but I like it. I actually need to add that in there because it keeps getting brought up. And so I'm kind of wondering if it's like if it's one of those things where God is like kind of saying, hey, Tiffany, pay attention to this, and the thought process of like, maybe this is something that a lot of women do agree with and think about, and guys don't necessarily. So maybe that's where some of the disconnect is happening. So I'm going to have to remember to write that down and put that in the new set of questions I send out for all the other ladies. But yeah, it's such a good point though. I find it very attractive when a guy is very self-aware. Like if they can tell me like, hey, this is something I went through. This is how I grew out of it. This is what I'm doing to make things better in the future. Chef's kiss. Like, it's so nice.
You just realize that they won't be able to see you do that chef's kiss, right?
I know.
You're like, oh, I better say.
Yeah, I did. I was like, chef's kiss. I'm like,
I can't see that.
It's true. That's why I had to say it. It's so funny because like I'll do stuff like that all the time and I'm like, they can't see this. So I have to explain what I'm doing now.
Yes. So on that topic of green flags.
Yeah.
Another one that is pretty big for me, it's pretty broad sweeping, but if I think about a man who was like, what do women want? I want a man with integrity. Someone who was going to do the right thing when no one is looking. Like that is such a big deal to me. And honestly, well, they say that self-esteem comes from how you actually feel. It's because you can see yourself all the time. And so you'll have high self-esteem if you act according to your own code of ethics when no one is looking. And so I feel like when you meet someone, if you can tell that they have like a high self-esteem, then I wonder, and I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if sometimes that comes from them following their own code of ethics.
You got my psychological brain working now. That's a really interesting concept. I've never heard that though. But I mean, that would it would make sense if like that. I think it kind of points back to like self-confidence too. Like if you're confident in the person that you are, because this is how you always act as far as integrity is concerned, or, you know, I mean, the Bible talks about like not letting your right hand see what your left hand is doing, or I might be switching that up, but you know, that whole idea of having integrity no matter what, but having like self-confidence that comes from that / self-esteem, I guess is another way to say it. Yeah.
Nice. But it has to be authentic self-esteem though.
Yes.
Not showboating. Like that, there's such a huge difference there. And it's, at least for me, it's like a neon lights of I'm hiding insecurities versus, I guess we all have insecurities. I'm not saying that, but yeah, just that authentic self versus the mask.
Mm-hmm. You're making me think of my recent therapy session, because my therapist was like, which is your authentic self, Tiffany? And I'm like, not the performer, not the people pleaser. Those are not authentic. But it's so funny though, because it's such a hard line to walk within those two, you know? And then what I feel like is my authentic self, because I am very much a helper, and, you know, like that's how I show I care for people. So it's like a fine line between being like the performer / people pleaser and then being my true authentic helper self. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me, I'm actually opposite. My just carefree, loud, that is my authentic self. That I am constantly reeling her in. All right, come on now, be socially appropriate. Bring it down, baby. Water it down. Don't be real self. They can't handle it. That is who I really am. When I'm out with the cows and nobody's around, that's who I am. Mm-hmm. And yes, oh man, that's good stuff. Like, who is your authentic self? And let that person show. Honestly, it's quite effective to let your real self show to people real quick. Mm-hmm. Because they'll either like it or they won't.
Yeah, that is very accurate. I've definitely been trying to do that a lot more lately, because I'm such an uber goober. Like I'm just a weirdo. I really am.
You really love Ubers? You love to ride on your Uber?
Oh, no. I said I'm an uber goober. So like.
Corny.
So corny. Hilarious.
So anyway.
Yeah. I love corny jokes though. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's such a fine line for me to be, because I feel like I am more of that I'm not outgoing, but so I borderline between introvert and extrovert. And so when I'm really comfortable with people who I know aren't judging me, like that's when my crazy extrovert comes out, and I'm just like, here I am, this is me, you know. Like, then when I'm not so comfortable, I go a little bit more introverted, and I'm just like, I'm gonna sit over here and be weird. You know, but it's so funny to me, like trying to figure out which one is more me, if that makes any sense at all, because yeah. Again, like when I'm comfortable with people, I'm just like, here it is. Like this is
That's why I like introverts so much, is because, well, okay, so my background, I have a degree in communication. And so with introvert, extrovert, the way that they define it is an introvert recharges
yes.
in private because being around people drains them. It really doesn't have anything to do with how loud you are or interactive you are. It really has to do with energy. Whether being in a social situation drains you so that then you need time with only one person or by yourself to recharge. Or on the other side of that, with extrovert, if being around people recharges you and being on your own, working alone or being like just a mom with her kids or whatever, if that drains you and you're like, I have to have I have to have a certain level of social interaction or my like quality of life plummets. And so it's like, that's me. I have a need to have that social outlet met or I'm really unhappy. So that's kind of where textbook wise where that goes.
Yeah, and that's perfectly said. I love that. I felt like I was back in class, but in a good way. I guess like to explain it like more about what like when I'm talking about for me personally is I do find myself in between on the I'm going to have a lot of energy by being around people, but then I also need time to be alone. So like that's kind of what I meant by like trying to figure out which one's more accurate. I don't know. But yeah, because I do, that's what I also meant by like being comfortable, because when I'm around those people that I am comfortable with, I do feel less drained at the end of it. Where like if here's where my performer comes in. When I feel like I have to be on par or performing or whatever, even if it's around some people that I'm not so comfortable with, or it's like a mixture, then I'm drained, if that makes sense. And so like that's kind of where, I guess it's something I need to figure out.
Makes sense to be, being different depending on the audience that you're in.
Yeah. And I guess which self I'm in. If I'm being authentic. Huh?
Yeah. I said, which hat you have on?
Yeah, which hat I have on. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. Again, I think that points back to being self-aware and like realizing, hey, these people are draining. These people are not draining. And, kind of balancing that out and figuring out why they might be draining, or, are you drained because you haven't had enough time for whatever, like all the different things. But yeah.
I get it. I'm on there with my kids are peeking at me through the door. I think something must be going on. Bye, Ken. Okay, can we pause for just 1 second?
Yeah, I will pause.
Good.
Okay, that's so funny. Okay, so enough ranting about that for now. I'm sure it'll come back up. But let me see.
I really liked the question about, let's say you're dating a guy. Let's say the guy you're dating is having a rough day. Do you want to share that or hold it in and be strong? As a guy, there can be a lot of pressure to have it all together all the time. Does it make us look weak to admit it when we don't? I thought that was such a good question. For me, I appreciate a man who is able to communicate his feelings, like, I had a rough day. This is why. That way it gives me an opportunity to bless him. Like if I don't know what's going on, I don't know that actually what's needed right now, even though I'm trying to make dinner, what's needed right now is for me to give him a hug and tell him that I'm proud of him. So if he doesn't open that door and allow me to bless him in that way, it's almost like a loss of connection there that could have happened. But it takes bravery on his part to be able to, and vulnerability to be able to give that real authentic how it went. But not only that, not only does it allow me to bless him, but it kind of gives me permission that when I have a rough day, that it's okay for me to say that too.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I don't have much to add to that. That was good. I agree. It's so important to have that kind of emotional vulnerability and connection. And yeah, you're right. Like, how else are we supposed to bless the man in our lives if we don't know what they need? Because we're not mind readers, even though we like to pretend we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And vice versa. Like, too, like, we have to be open and willing to say, hey, I have this going on right now. This is what I need from you on the flip side, Yeah.
I feel like people who are coming from a rough situation, like if they've been in a pretty rough relationship and then now they're in one that is safe and respectful and whatnot, I feel like confrontation can be incredibly difficult, requiring an insane amount of trust that probably doesn't make sense to the other person, that it could be that stressful. But I guess that's where knowing each other's, kind of story and that kind of stuff can help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, too, because they're with words, like the healing process is never over. Right. And so we never know when those triggers are going to come up. And it's like having the knowledge of like, hey, this person went through this in the past. And if this is the reaction we're getting, it probably has more to do with that and less to do with this situation right now. So having the awareness of that in the moment can also help with a lot of like de-stressing the situation, but also, not taking that on internally, because it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's the other situation, but being able to kind of walk through that together. Yeah.
Have you heard the phrase, if the reaction is hysterical, you're dealing with history?
Ooh, I've never heard it said that way. That's awesome.
Huh. The reaction you're getting is like not fitting to the scenario that you're in. You're not actually dealing with that, you're dealing with history. I thought that was so good. Ugh. Yes.
That is really good. Yeah. That I'm gonna sit on that one for a while too. Like, whoa. I mean, it's so true. I love that it doesn't rhyme, but you know what I mean? Like the connection is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've had to remind myself of that a lot when I'm like, in a situation where somebody is purposely, probably one of my siblings, purposely pushing buttons, and then it's like, okay, this reaction is not helpful, Tiffany, but also don't push my buttons, and so it's like that balance of self-awareness again, but in that moment being like, hey, sibling, this isn't cool, you know, and being able to kind of to de-escalate the situation and talk about it. You know, and again, that comes with self-awareness on their side as well.
And having the bravery to have the conversation of, hey, I know that maybe our whole lives we've laughed over this, but actually, really, I don't find it very funny. And it's not fun for me. You know what I mean? Because, like, it takes a lot of sort of gumption to, when you've had a history of joking around about certain things, and then, you know, maybe something changes. Maybe you never thought it was funny. But in my mind, how we say it as family, if both people are having fun and enjoying it, then that's play. If one person is having fun and the other person is upset, that's being mean. And both people have to be enjoying it. And as long as the person who's not enjoying it says, hey, this is not fun for me, you know, you have to let the other person know, because otherwise they're being mean and they don't know it. Right? So just being able to verbalize that, hey, this is not fun for me. and then they have a choice, right? They can either continue and actually be mean, or they can reel it back and, you know, got a different way to have fun.
Yeah, agreed. It's all about maturing and you know, being willing to have uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm working on. Ooh-wee.
Me too.
Yes.
It's like oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's so silly how, like, little things can be so difficult. Like, I guess it just shows me where I still have a lot of room for growth. And it, definitely in the confrontation area, that is where I still have a lot of room for growth.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, same. Same. Confrontation was never, it was never a, I don't want to say this, healthy thing growing up. That's, yeah, it was just, yeah. But, you know, again, like, we're all learning and growing and all that. And so, you know, as a family, we've been able to have some pretty interesting conversations in the last probably, well, I want to say probably since COVID. So 2020. But like, you know, just being able to say, hey, this stuff, you know, wasn't great in the past. And not that we're looking for like an apology or anything like that at this point, but just, you know, moving forward, how can we do better? You know, we're going to all let it go as best we can, you know, and what are we going to do from this moment forward to make our relationships better, healthier, use other buzz or insert other buzzword here. But, you know, it's true. It's like where, you know, forgiveness is huge. Forgiveness is huge. Yeah, and like self-forgiveness also. Not just the forgiveness for others.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I could probably go on a rant about that one, but I'll rein it in for now.
Questions that you really don't have very many answers to yet.
See, that's the funny thing is like we've kind of brushed over all of them in different ways because a lot of these are connected, or like they boil down to something in particular. Like the integrity question, or the communication questions. We all, overall, so far, a lot of the women feel like everything boils down to those two things, integrity and communication. And so I've been like, yes, I'm not the only one. But yeah, I don't like, I'm trying to think what else I haven't gotten a lot of.
I thought the question about if a man has genuinely become interested in you long distance, would you explore that? What if you haven't been and aren't open to long distance? Would you rather him be honest and tell you of his interest, keep that to himself? Well, I love that this person, like their initial reaction was, maybe, I don't want to give her any unpleasant emotions by me telling this to her. Like he's wanting to protect her from having to go through any unpleasant emotions. I love that. I love that. So woohoo, whoever it is that wrote that question. I hope you listen to this.
Don't worry. I know who wrote that one because he sent it to me directly and he will be listening. So
good. So I'm just going to say how I would feel about this. I don't know how other people would feel, but if someone saw my light from across the United States or from across the world or whatever, and they said, I need to know her better. Who am I to say no, thank you? You know what I mean? Like, here I am walking around this bright light. Here I am. And it's too much for most people. And so if someone sees the beauty that is me, it feels like a sin for him to not tell me. So that's how I see it. That, we'll figure out the other stuff when it comes down to at least get to know each other better, So like I can't move. My kids are here. I'm taking care of my parents. My, their dad is here when I can't move, but maybe he can, or, who knows. But I would definitely want that person to reach out and let me know that they find me amazing. Who doesn't want to know that?
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, and like I'm personally very open to long distance. Obviously, I don't want it to be like long distance for long term, but
right.
But I can move. Like I can freely move. I don't have anything other than my nieces and nephew, like holding me here. So, it's like, bye. I can move, And so, yeah, I agree. Like I would want them to say, hey, like I'm interested in you and see where the conversation goes. And ironically, I was listening to another podcast earlier and I need to stop using the see where it goes phrase, but whatever. Anyway, they were talking about that. It's two guys. And I think I posted about it in 824. But they were specifically talking about how do you find a quality woman? And I was like, ooh, let's hear how these two guys think that they can find quality women, right?
Yeah,
I know, right? And I was sitting there and I was like, this is good though. Yeah, I'll send it to you because you should just listen to the whole
thing. Because I now have need to know.
Yeah, you have to listen to it in its full. But the one of the big things that they said was stop using the phrase see how it goes. Because like if you're out there putting yourself out there, you have this intention to get married and all this stuff, like stop being so like wishy-washy is how they felt that phrase is. And I was like, oh. But yeah, I mean, but they were specifically talking about it, if I'm remembering the phrasing correctly, in reference to guys not having the integrity and the intentionality of when like they're trying to pursue somebody. And I was all, oh, I'm just gonna air clap for that one, sirs, because yes. And so, but yeah, I took away from it, okay, stop using that phrasing too, because I want to be very intentional on my side of things as well. You know, like when I'm getting to know somebody, I'm asking very specific questions. I'm not wasting the time. You know, like I have a checklist, but it's a very short checklist, if I'm being honest. You know, but I have these things. Like, and if you meet these things, then what are we doing? Like, you know, after that, everything else is pretty, let's figure it out along the way kind of stuff. You know, so anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Where I get kind of not really sure what to do is I want to find out the answers to those questions right away. Mm-hmm. Like even when we're just chatting, I want to know if you're a Christian. I want to know, you know, if it's a big part of your life, these things. And it seems like it's too much too soon. Just that I frankly don't know what to do, because I don't want to waste both of our times. If you tell me that, you know, you're not a Christian and you hate all Christians or whatever, like, all right, well, I wish you the best, but I don't need to pursue this any further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's like, I've done that a lot too, where I feel like, oh, it's too much too soon. And then my therapist reminds me, no, this is your list. These are your non-negotiables. And you're weeding out all the guys that don't fit that. And I'm like, okay, true. And just like, would you rather found that out 5 months down the road or like 5 minutes into the conversation? And I'm all, yeah, 5 minutes into the conversation. You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like, it's a balance, I feel like sometimes, but still, if you're being intentional in the dating process, you should be asking those questions ASAP, because those are your things that, you know, you can't get past. Like those are your non-negotiables. That's your fine line. You know what I mean? Or your big line. Depending on which line. Thing it is. Yeah. It is the line. But yeah, I feel like it's really interesting when people's, not trying to sound judgy, but when people's lists are like insanely specific, you know, and I'm just like, okay, there's no room for God in that, I feel like, but okay. You know, I had that conviction a while back of like, your list is was too stringent. And because I realized I was putting God in this, well, box for lack of a better word, but, you know, basically saying this is the guy I want and this is the only guy I want, versus thinking about the guy that I need. You know, because the guy I want so far has not worked out. So it's like, maybe I need to think about the guy I need instead of the traits and things that I think are going to work best with me. So anyway.
Try to keep it. Yeah, no, I'm on right there with you. I try to think, if I knew this person from church, like if this person was in this room with me and flirted with me, would I flirt back? And so that line of who I would flirt back with, and I don't just mean be polite, because if I wasn't attracted to them at all, I would just be polite. I probably wouldn't flirt back. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm like, you know, the swiping. I'm like, okay, now stop. I'm going to look at this person and think to myself, if he was in the room with me and he was funny and he was, all these things, and he turned to me and flirted with me, ooh, like that line of really anyone who's normal would qualify there. You know what I mean? And so, yes, I feel like in person, it's a lot easier to have normal standards. And unfortunately, I feel like when we start doing the online thing, it's just so easy to raise that bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed. It's I have lots of thoughts regarding that.
See the filter. Let me put another filter on here.
Why am I filtering myself? This is my podcast. Okay. Yes. To sum all the thoughts up. Yes. Okay, let me I gotta think through which point I wanted to make.
I love
it. You're seeing my performer battle with my authentic self right now. Okay. So the idea that, yes, we put the bar too high when we have the ability to just sit there and swipe, because the concept is they're just a person. They're not even a person on the other side of that screen is like, what? And I obviously to equate that to the group setting, with online groups and stuff, there are things that people will say and because they're behind the screen. I feel like in certain scenarios, people may not be that blunt or that rude to somebody's face, but because they have the screen there, they're going to be like, I'm just going to put this out here, blah, 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 like whatever it is. Granted, there are some people who are that rude and blunt, but whatever. Stereotypically speaking, people aren't going to be that rude to somebody's face. And so, yeah, when I see certain scenarios like that happening in the groups and the dynamics and stuff, I'm just like, what? That's still a human being that you're talking to, even though there's a screen in between the two of you. So let's have a little bit more grace. Let's be a little kinder. Let's be a little bit more loving and Christ-like to each other. And yeah, that was that was where my brain went with all of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It almost makes me wonder, what if I gave myself a 5-minute timer that I have to look at that person and read their thing and, make myself think about it for 5 minutes before I, left, said no, thank you. So that I really gave it a shot. I struggle with if they don't give very much information. They just say, this is where I live and this is what I do. I'm like, well, I need more information than that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you hiding? Are you a Christian and you just didn't bother checking the box? Or are you not a Christian and that's why you didn't check the box? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Hard.
Yeah, it is. And it's I agree. I think the timer thing would be a cool idea. I'm personally not on apps and I don't plan on getting back on them. There's this other, ironically from the podcast I was talking about, they have a network that I'm considering joining. But I haven't. I'm not doing that until, if I do that, I will do that after the beginning of the year. I'm kind of trying to just give myself some time to just meet people and kind of see if anything happens before jumping back into the online world. Obviously I'm involved in the group too, but yeah, I don't want it to be like a a thing. Because dating apps have just been a whole situation. So anyway, but earlier you mentioned flirting. Then it made me think of a question. Like, I feel like a lot of guys and women, well, sometimes we'll get confused. Are they just being nice or are they flirting? So I don't know. I don't know how I want to phrase this question, but like, I guess how for you personally, what would be like a good way for a guy to know, hey, you're flirting instead of just being nice?
All right. So let's say that a guy is a heavy smoker and he is flirting with me, and that is a straight up no for me. If he flirts with me and says, some kind of insert witty comment here, I will laugh and I will look away. And then I'll change the subject. Okay, so I'll still laugh, but I'll look away. Just disconnect there. And then, talk to Jane right there. So Jane, how's blah blah going? I'll end it. I'll still I don't want that person to feel embarrassed or anything, but I'm not going to add onto it. I'm not going to step toward him. When he stepped toward me by flirting, I can stay there and laugh and then move towards someone else to let them know, like, I'm not flirting with you. But I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. Versus someone flirts with me that I am interested in, and I'm going to step right up there, step right back toward him. And I might look away, but I'll be giggling and thinking about my comeback, and they come back right back at him. So there's that reciprocity where we're coming toward each other. So that's kind of my quick answer on that with flirting versus being nice.
That was gold. It was funny. I'm over here like, how would I explain this myself? And I'm like, yep, nope, I couldn't have said it any better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny but sometimes when I am flirting with somebody though, and I get like kind of freaking out a little bit, I will do the same thing though. I'll like change the subject. So maybe that's something I need to work on and not change the subject.
Yes. You have to give that reciprocity. And I'm speaking to the choir because sometimes I struggle with even just giving eye contact. Okay. So I do not have this figured out, but I am making myself do it. Like there's someone at church that's somewhat interested in, and so I'm forcing myself to give eye contact and to say hi to that person. And it's like this actually perfect example. So he had smiled at me, and I got nervous and turned away and ran off. Okay. So then I was like, I didn't reciprocate back. And I do like him. Not like, but I am interested. And so that's I made myself smile at him the next time we were at church, but he didn't look at me since I ignored him last time. So I had to go out of my way and like talk to him. And so he talked back to me, but we were in a big hurry. So we ran off. And then the next time we were at church, we passed in the hallway, and I tried to smile at him, and he didn't even look at me. There was no reason not to. Like I was coming down the stairs, he was going up the stairs, and he kept his eyes forward and did not look at me with his daughter. And so I was like, all right, well, I got my answer there. I took that step toward him saying, hey, blah, 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 when we were in line. The next time, all he would have to do was turn his eyeballs over and smile at me, but he didn't. Go to bed. If you can't leave me alone, go to bed. Those are the options right now. But I did have to come back to myself and say, remember that time not too long ago when he smiled at you and you turned and ran off?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he just had a moment like that. So, it's not all perfect dancing and whatnot. So who knows what will happen, whether that really was him being like, you stepped out of the way to say hi to me the other day, but I'm not going to look at you, so that way you know that I'm not interested. Like, that could have been what that was, but only time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. That was like really good. Because, yeah. I don't know. I always struggle to figure out how to explain the difference between just being nice and legitimate flirting. Because I'm a weirdo when I flirt. So, have you seen those memes where it's like, if you think I'm flirting with you, I'm probably just being nice, and if you think I'm really weird, then I'm probably flirting with you? That is me.
Yes. Oh, terrible. But honestly, the number one indicator that I am horribly attracted to someone, by horribly, I mean like very horribly attracted to someone, is I can't bring myself to look at them. Like, what is your problem? How are they going to know? How is there even hope of this going somewhere if you can't even look at the man?
So true.
He's gonna read my thoughts.
It's written all over my face that I'm attracted to.
Oh man. Yes.
Same. It's funny though, because like I'll kind of teeter between the I'm never gonna look at you or I look too long, and then I'm like, just
oh, you're getting all the laughs out tonight.
Yeah. It's like, watch your face, Tiffany. Just relax a little bit. It's okay. Obviously it's just scenarios, I guess.
Oh my goodness. We should do like flirting video chats and practice flirting on each other.
Oh my gosh.
How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. Get some real eye contact there.
Some great eye contact through the screen.
Switch it to the camera, then he does a real person's eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Good. Oh, that's good.
Well, that is good.
Well, I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah. I greatly appreciate your time. This was fun. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the stories and the perspectives that were shared in this episode. Please share it with a friend whose dating life might need some help. Wink, wink. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at An Epiphany with Tiff. I really hope to see you there. There are multiple ways that you can support my show. You can pray for me, rate, review, and share any episode that you love. Or you can even financially contribute by going to patreon.com/An Epiphany with Tiffany. Until next time, I'm Tiffany, and I hope you just had an epiphany.